All right, we got a sheet going around that we gave out last time, chapters 12 through 14. So if you got it last time, you're good. If you didn't, raise your hand and Gary will be glad to get you up. That's it? All right. Okay. Wow, it's 6:27 and we've got just about everybody in here because that clock in the other room is going crazy. And you saw us like 10 till 7, oh my. So, official time in here, 6:28. All right, if anybody doesn't have a sheet, just let me know and I'll make a copy of it. Maybe a copy for you after class. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. We're just a couple of minutes till the official start time. Welcome everybody back. If you weren't here Sunday, we welcome those back who are traveling. Good to have you with us. Our class schedule is going to be just a little sporadic. We've got this week and the next 2 weeks we'll be in here, so 3 weeks in a row. Then at the end of the month, we will have 2 Wednesdays, which we will have Devos, okay? So 3 classes, then 2 Devos. Then we have the month of January. I hope we will finish this class by the end of January. That's my target date. I had to move the end of December a little bit. Too many Devos, man. All right. So let's just kind of do a little quick review, just to kind of just remind us of where we are and what we're doing. We're looking at the book of Revelation from the vantage point of hope, which admittedly is not the way many people look at it, but I think that gets underserved. I think there's a tremendous amount of hope to be found in this book. And then we said the other thing we spent a lot of time on the first 2 classes was our approach to this. What's the framework we're going to use for understanding Revelation? You know, it's kind of like dumping out all these puzzle pieces and, you know, how are we going to make sense of it? And most people, when they've got a puzzle, they start with the frame, right? You get the frame all worked out. So here's our frame. We said it's written to 7 churches in Asia, 1st century. It is not written to 7 symbolic churches. Now, I get how people say that because pretty much everything in Revelation is symbolic. But we know these are not symbolic churches because the chapters we didn't look at, chapters 2 and 3, they have great details to each one of these churches, don't they? You couldn't do that if it's a symbolic church. These are real churches in Asia, real people, real problems, real challenges, and we didn't spend any time on that, but chapters 2 and 3 detail that. So we know these are real churches. The second thing we said is the time. John tells us 4 times, twice in chapter 1, twice in chapter 22. So we've got a kind of a double inclusio. He tells us that time is near, the time is at hand, you know, these kinds of things. So John is telling these 7 historical churches in the 1st century, time's near. So there wouldn't be any reason to think, whoa, wait a second, what's in Revelation hasn't happened yet. John couldn't tell them the time was near if it's over 2,000 years away. So really simple to understand, but it's amazing how many people just fly right through that. Third thing we said is that John is signifying these things. He tells us that in the first couple of verses. So he is not telling us literal things, he's giving us pictures. And he's speaking through pictures. We in the West largely don't do this. We're good for a symbol here and there, but we don't just speak in pictures. So that's why Revelation has been really challenging to us, because John's speaking in pictures. And And the other piece we said, the other part of our frame is most of these pictures, not all, but most of them come from the Old Testament. So that's kind of the way that we get an understanding of what these pictures are about. So if you keep these four things in mind, constantly as you go through Revelation, I think it really helps a lot. And really, we pretty much stayed true to all these things as we've been working our way through. All right, so last time, 2 weeks ago, we were in chapter 12, and we saw this dragon. And this dragon had, what did it have? Was it, somebody help me out, how many horns and heads and all that stuff?
7 heads, 10 horns, 7 crowns.
Okay. 7 heads, 10 horns, 7 crowns. So yeah, just really hard to imagine. And we see this woman who is about to give birth. She's clothed in light. She has the moon underneath her feet. She's the people of God. And she's about to give birth to a child who is obviously Jesus. And what does the dragon want to do? He wants to eat that baby. And that is a very grotesque kind of symbol, but yet at the same time, it's very real. Satan is not anybody's buddy. He's not out to give us the good life. He's out to destroy us. Now, he will make us think he offers the good life, but he's out to destroy us just like he wanted to destroy the baby of this woman, the Christ child. So, how does that work out for him here? What happens? What happens to the baby?
Gets snatched up to heaven.
He's taken up to heaven. So, we get to see that, Satan does not accomplish his purposes. So he goes up to heaven. There's a war there. There's Michael and the other angels, and they're kind of fighting it out. Who wins that one? God. Michael and the angels. So he loses again. So next picture, he goes down to earth. He's in pursuit of this woman who's out in the desert. This same woman, the people of God. And he's pursuing them, and he even has this deal where this water comes out to try to, drown them or something, disable them or something. But the earth swallows up the water. So once again, he's a loser. So big truth of chapter 12, it's not hard to understand at all. You work your way through these pictures. You don't get intimidated by them. And you see the core message is Satan is a 3-time loser. He's going to keep trying. He's still, even after the 3rd time, he goes after, the people of God after that, some other people of God. So he's a 3-time loser. So that's the message of chapter 12. So this is on your synopsis. I just took this right off the synopsis. So here's what we're supposed to see. As we move toward Rome's ultimate judgment, because we've done the seals, we've done the trumpets. What do we got left? The bowls. So the bowls are the ultimate judgment. The judgment will be dumped out on them. As we move toward Rome's ultimate judgment, disciples receive complete assurance by seeing Satan defeated 3 times. So there you go. Who's going to win? We are. We're the people of God, and we're winning not because of us, but because we are the people of God. And God is going to see us through. This being so, we know that what we're about to see in chapter 13, how many people had a chance to read chapter 13? Oh, I didn't know he was going to ask that. Okay. We're going to see 2 beasts in chapter 13. So we know that the 2 beasts that will align themselves with Satan, though they are fierce and gruesome, will go down to defeat as well. So what I want you to see in this is when you back off all the sensationalism that people love to import into Revelation, it's not really there in Revelation, all this stuff about, this is Hamas, this is whatever. No, this is all stuff relative to people in the first century. When we get away from all that and just look at the big picture, it's really not that difficult to understand. So in chapter 12, we get this threefold assurance. Satan's, he's a loser. So when we see him embodied in two beasts that represent Rome, it's kind of a scary picture, but we've already been assured who's going to win. This is like if you watch a movie, okay, and the movie starts with the main character telling you the story, okay? So he takes you in flashback form. You automatically know, no matter what happens during the movie, what's going to happen to the main character. He's going to be okay. He's telling the story. Yeah, so this is exactly what God is showing us. Look, it's going to be okay. I want you to understand this. All right, so 3 passages you need. You absolutely, positively, no matter what else you do, you need to own these 3 passages. I didn't make that clear, did I? Okay, 3 passages. Daniel 7, Revelation 13, and Revelation 17. Listen, aside from what we talked about the very first of class with the little framework that we just went over, this is probably going to be more helpful than anything else in Revelation in terms of understanding the historical background. So you just have to absolutely own these passages, all right? So no pressure on anybody or anything. But let me say this in all seriousness. So we're going to go over something tonight that I think after you see it a few times, you're just going to kind of go, oh, I see this. It may not happen tonight, though, okay? Tonight's reaction may be, something like that. That's okay. Just hang on to this. We'll review it next week. But do give yourself the opportunity to give this a good hearing, to try to come within understanding distance. All right, so we'll start out in chapter 13. And the dragon stood on the shore, the dragon from chapter 12, and the last thing we were told was he's going off to chase God's people, right? So that's what he's doing. He's standing on the shore of the sea. I saw a beast coming out of the sea. And what about this? He had 10 horns and 7 heads with 10 crowns on each of his horns, and on each name and on each head a blasphemous name. Who does this sound like? The dragon of chapter 12. And good reason, because this is Rome as it has been empowered by the dragon, by Satan. So no reason he shouldn't be described in the same way. All right, so here's where we start with this description of the beast having 10 horns, 7 heads, and 10 crowns on his horns, and on each head a blasphemous name. So you really want to kind of peg this verse, and we are going to follow this through tonight. We're going to go from Revelation 13 to Daniel 7, back to Revelation 13, and then just for good measure to Revelation 17. That sounds kind of daunting, but give yourself a chance. I think this will go better than it sounds. There's a depiction of somebody's idea of what the beast looks like, so fair enough. All right, so let's start with something really nice and simple. This is kind of my go-to when Revelation gets too apocalyptic for us, a little overwhelming. We go back to the Wizard of Oz, right? Because yes, we're not intimidated by that. But if you think about it, Wizard of Oz is really some strange stuff, isn't it? I mean, really. It borders on bizarre, but we saw this when we were kids, so we grew up with this, so this is very natural to us. And really, Revelation is the same way, but we usually get into it as adults, so it just seems really bizarre. Okay, well, Glinda the Good Witch is listening to Dorothy, and Dorothy's this teenager, God bless her, and she wants to go somewhere over the rainbow, anywhere other than Kansas, right? Yeah, you know, our kids, when they're going through that transition from, child to semi-independent adult, they just want to be somewhere else, right? They want to be doing their own thing. They're ready. Well, she gets a little taste of Oz and, the witch, the bad witch and all that stuff, and what she decides she wants to do. Kansas doesn't look so bad now, I'd like to go back to Kansas. And Glinda tells her, do you remember? There's only one person in Oz who can make that happen. It is the professor, the wizard. Yeah, wizard, actually. He's in Emerald City. How do you get to Emerald City? Oh, you knew it. Follow the yellow brick road. Okay, so that's the storyline for the Wizard of Oz. Kind of like we're following the seals and the trumpets and the bowls. We're going to follow something else during this class time. We're going to follow the horn, okay? So that's what we're going to do. Same kind of thing Dorothy's doing. We're just doing it with the horn. So this is out of Daniel 2. We all know this, but just a quick review. So this is Nebuchadnezzar's dream. And he has this dream about this image, and the image, of course, has 4 parts. And the 4 parts represent 4 kingdoms. The first kingdom is the Babylonian kingdom. The second one, the Medo-Persian. The third one, the Macedonian kingdom. And the fourth is Rome. And then the stone, of course, is Christ and his kingdom. So easy peasy, right? Nothing hard about that. We get over to chapter 7. Same kind of thing. He's just telling the same story with different images, okay? Instead of this being a statue, these are these kind of macabre, bizarre animals. We've got a lion with the wings of an eagle. We've got a bear raised up on its side with, ribs in its mouth. We've got a leopard with 4 wings and 4 heads. And then for Rome, we've got the terrifying beast with what? 11 horns. Okay, so that's what we want to cue in on. So I just want you to see, though, that we've got some repetition in Daniel, same kind of thing, just from 2 different vantage points. And anybody here who's a teacher, this is how people learn things. You explain it to them one time from this perspective, then you backdoor them from another perspective, and you help them to kind of see it from different angles and approaches, and it gives a more holistic understanding. So that's all Daniel is doing, and he ends up with this beast that has 11 horns. So we're interested in the 11th horn out of Daniel 7. And here's what we're told in verse 24 of Daniel 7. The 10 horns are 10 kings. No interpretation there. We're not making up something bizarre. This is what Daniel tells us. This is how you understand this vision. The 10 horns are 10 kings who will come from this kingdom. What kingdom is it? Rome. Yeah, the last kingdom, the kingdom of Rome. So they will come from this. And then another king will rise, and we know enough math to know that's number 11. So that's what we're interested in. So in Daniel, here's what we want. A couple of things we want. One thing we want is just to see the horns equal to kings. No big deal there. But some of these things shift a little bit as they get transported into Revelation 13 and 17. So just remember in Daniel, the horns equal to kings. We know that because he told us that. Okay, so no biggie there. All right, so first 11 emperors of Rome. You can look this up. I think I got this off Wikipedia, so there you go. This is just general knowledge. Everybody knows 11th emperor of Rome is Domitian. So just real simple. And now we're not following the horn, okay? I want us to follow the king, because Daniel's already given us permission to do that, right? He's told us the horns represent kings. So we've made a transition from following the horn to following the king. And in particular, we want to follow this 11th king. So Domitian's the 11th horn of Daniel 7, the 11th king of Rome, 11th emperor. No problem there. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The 10 horns are 10 kings who come from this kingdom. After them, another king, Domitian, will arise, different from the earlier ones. He will subdue 3 kings. Okay? So we got 11 kings, and Domitian's that 11th king, and he is going to subdue 3 kings. Anybody know the problem with this in Rome? Why would it be difficult to subdue the 3 of the kings who went before you? They were all dead. Yeah. See, Rome was not like the United States of America. You know, you see at Rosalind Carter's funeral, all the leading first ladies, you know, who were living were there. We've got plenty of ex-presidents still alive. It did not work that way in Rome. If you were an emperor and you were lucky, you died of natural causes. If you were an emperor and you were unlucky, you were assassinated. So that's the way it worked. But there were no ticker tape parades where the former emperor came out to take a bow. He wasn't there. So here's what we're saying. This did not happen historically. Do you think Daniel knows this? Of course he does, even though he's speaking predictively. He knows this. So we have to do what we do, and when we're studying symbols and images, go, okay, so he's not trying to state a literal truth here, so what's he trying to do? And I'm going to tell you, it is a device of Daniel's to make Domitian the 8th king. Okay? It's Wednesday night, we just ate, maybe getting a little tired, but we can still do basic math, right? You got 11 kings, you take away 3, what does that leave you with? I knew we could do that. So he's trying to make Domitian the 8th king. So now we're to the 13th floor we talked about a few weeks ago. You can't see this really well, but it's just, you know, the elevator control panel, okay? And the part that's circled, maybe you can see it's got 12 and then it's got 14. It does not have 13. So they have just removed 13 from it. And if you want to get real technical about it, every floor after 12 is mislabeled, right? Because 14 isn't really 14, it's 13. 15 isn't really 15, it's 14, and all the way up through 31. So you actually have more floors mislabeled on this control panel than you do with the right label. Does anybody care about that? No. We understand they've done this to alleviate the superstitions of people who believe this means something. Probably we don't get into that, but who cares? It's not important. You can still get where you need to go. So it's just something we do today. That's all John is doing, or Daniel's doing. Now he's not doing it for the same reason. He's not trying to alleviate any fears. He's trying to make a certain point. So what is that point? Well, the 11th king of Daniel 7 becomes the 8th king. You've kind of seen that. He uproots 3, so that makes him the 8th king. In Revelation 13, John will begin where Daniel ends. So he won't start with a beast with 11 heads. He'll actually start with a beast with 8 heads. And I know you're looking and you're going, Bruce, it just says 7 in chapter 13. Hold on a minute. So I want you to see that John begins where Daniel ends. If you're in chapter 13, let's just look at another thing that he does. So the dragon stood on the shore of the sea. This is 13:1. Saw the beast coming out of the sea. 10 horns, 7 heads, 10 crowns on its head, and on each head a blasphemous name. Verse 2, the beast I saw resembled a leopard, but had the feet of a bear and the mouth like that of a lion. Man, where have we heard this before? Daniel 7. Except what's the difference here? Got him backwards. Because in Daniel 7, he's looking forward. So first will come the bear, then will come the leopard, then will come Rome. But now he's looking backwards in Revelation, right? Because that stuff's already come. So he goes with what was closest to him in time, which was the leopard, Alexander the Great, his kingdom. Then we got the Persian kingdom, those of the feet like those of a bear, and then the lion, Babylonia. So you see what he's doing? And why are these three kingdoms even mentioned in connection with Rome? We touched on that a little earlier, but probably nobody would have any reason to remember it. Because historically they're gone, right? I mean, they're just a distant memory. They're just stuff for the historians. But the evil they did lives on in Rome, right? I mean, Rome's just kind of perpetuating the same kind of stuff they did. So they are mentioned in connection with the beast. They're mentioned as part of the beast, even though literally, historically, they're not part of the beast. But in terms of perpetuating evil, the evil that they did, it still lives on in Rome. Does that make sense? Not too hard to understand, is it? Okay. So John begins where Daniel ends. So here we go in chapter 13, verse 3. One of the heads of the beast seemed to have a fatal wound. Okay? So this is not a bad wound. This is not a disabling wound. This is a fatal wound. So medical person, tell us what that means. You're dead. Yeah. So nobody lives through a fatal wound, otherwise it's not fatal, right? So it seemed to have a fatal wound, but the fatal wound had been healed. Okay, so we're in this book of images and pictures. Where have we seen this before? What was sitting on the throne in Revelation 5 that looked like it was dead but was now alive? The Lamb, Jesus. We get that, right? Because he was resurrected. Rome is parroting that. It's not real, but they're parroting that. And that's what John wants us to see. So here's the biggie we got to get ready for. So I'm telling you, or I'm suggesting, okay? I'm suggesting that this fatal wound that we've got with this head, one of the heads of the beast seemed to have a fatal wound, but the fatal wound had been healed. This implies an eighth king who is a resurrection of one of the previous kings. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. Right? Fair enough. Fair enough. He doesn't come out and say that, does he? He just gives us this kind of nebulous imagery, and our Bible class teacher took it too far and came up with this incredible idea that, this head that had been fatally wounded, that actually represents an eighth king who is the resurrection of one of the previous kings. All right, well, here's what chapter haven't we looked at? We've looked at Daniel 7, we've looked at 13. What do we got left? 17. See, you guys are sharp as a tack on this. Okay, so this is 17. I'm going to leave you to look at the context. We've got the same beast, though. It's just different in some very minor ways. But look what he says. He says, they are also, he's talking about the kings, they are also 7 kings. I don't even know if this is what I want. Let's just go to Revelation 17. We're going to come back to this slide. We're just not quite ready for it. All right. Okay, so we'll set a little context while we're here. So here's this. Verse 3, angel carried me away in the spirit into a wilderness. I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast, and the beast was covered with blasphemous names and 7 heads and 10 horns. So we're carrying over the same kind of imagery. Go down to verse 8. Oh, go to verse 9. This calls for a mind with wisdom. If there's ever an understatement in the book of Revelation, that's it. You're going, no kidding. The 7 heads. Okay, that's what I wanted. Yeah, see, I don't have that in verse 10. So you need to start one verse earlier than what I got on the screen. So the 7 heads are 7 hills. Anybody know what city has 7 hills? See, there you go. On which the woman sits, but they are also what? Verse 10. 7 kings. So what are the 7 heads? 7 kings. How do we know that? We're told that. So yeah, we're not making this stuff up. But now stay with us. 5 have fallen, 1 is, the other has not yet come. You can push that aside for right now. When he comes, he must remain for a little while. Push that aside. The beast who once was and now is not, he's what? He's an 8th king. See, we got our 8 kings. He belongs to who? He belongs to the 7. So what John intimated, picture-wise, image-wise, back in 13, with that head that had been given a fatal wound but was now alive, that is meant to stand for 2 kings. You know, 1 king who's been resurrected and is in the likeness of a previous king. Does that make even a modicum of sense to you? Do you kind of see that? Just a little bit?
It was a lot easier just to simply say they had 2 kings.
What's that?
It was
What would we be studying tonight then? Yes, certainly would. But that's not the way they did apocryphal language. Look, honestly, a lot of those folks would be sitting in this class tonight if we were going over Ephesians and be going, where's the pictures? Where's the images? How am I supposed to understand this stuff? You know, it's kind of all what you're familiar with. Okay, so we got our 8th king, and we are told he's not just this random 8th king, he belongs to the 7 and is going to his destruction. Okay, so why are we all this stuff on 8? Why do we go back to the book of Daniel and we've got 3 horns that are removed so the 11th horn can become the 8th horn, which is the 8th king? Why does John pick this up? Why does he make this big deal about 7 heads, but 1 head had a fatal wound, but's been resurrected, and kind of gives us an 8th king, which he confirms in clear language in chapter 17. To your point, he is going to an awful lot of trouble to get to this. Why didn't he just say 8 kings? Well, he's developing some things. So let's start here. So here's why 8 is important. 8 is the number of the resurrection. Anybody ever heard that before? Okay, well, hang with me a little bit. 8th day is the start of a new week. Can we all see that? Got 7 days in the old week. You get to the 8th day. Is it part of the old week? It is a new week. And we're all excited about it, right? Absolutely. So it's a new week. So 8 became associated with newness. And this goes back to God's creation. You know, this wasn't something, somebody made up when they were doing the calendar. This is the way God created it. So God created 7 days. The 8th day becomes the new day. Jesus rose. First day of the week. But you could also call it the 8th day of the week, right? So he rose on the 8th day. If you know your Old Testament, you remember every 7th year under the Old Testament, they had what kind of year? Sabbatical year. We still use that, like for professors and things like that, people who take a sabbatical. So the land could rest. They wouldn't over-farm it, stuff like that. They dealt with debts, and they dealt with a lot of other things. So they did a sabbatical every 7 years. Then after they had done 7, and 7 times 7 is? Oh, you didn't even look at your watch or anything. That's great. 49. So the following year, be the 50th, it became the Jubilee. And the Jubilee is where everything was restored. All the land went back to its original owners. There are all these kinds of things that they did. So if you look at it, you had 7 Sabbaths, and then what was the 8th? The Jubilee, this restoration. So I'm telling you, there's a lot of images from the scripture that import this idea of 8 being the resurrection number. Maybe the first time we've heard it, but it's not like it came out of nowhere. It is rooted in scripture. And so, listen, they've dug up a lot of these ancient baptistries. How many sides do you think they have? 8. And why is that? Because we're becoming a new creature, right? We're being resurrected with Christ. Isn't that what's happening at baptism? So, perfect sense. Just not really something that we've brought over into our culture, but nonetheless a very prominent thing in biblical times, and they would latch onto this right away. So here's what I want to suggest then, that Domitian is Nero resurrected. Okay? They want to make him the 8th king. They want to make him the number of the resurrection because he is the resurrection of Nero. Nero is the only emperor up to this time who had persecuted the Christians. He's the only one who'd gone after the church. Now, I'm not suggesting the other emperors were in love with the church, but they didn't persecute it. They didn't go after it. They had other things to do. Nero did his atrocities in Rome. We're all pretty familiar with that. So nobody else did that again until Domitian. So he is talked about image-wise as the 8th king, even though literally he is number 11. These are just some writers from a little past biblical times. Tertullian called Domitian a limb of the bloody Nero. Eusebius said Domitian is the successor of Nero's campaign of hostility against God. So I'm just trying to make the point that this stuff may be new to us, but it was just matter-of-fact kind of stuff to people in earlier centuries. So Nero lived on in Domitian. So now back to the beast. Remember, the beast is this bad-looking thing with these heads and these horns and, these crowns and blasphemous names. But it's also where 3 previous kingdoms continue to live, right? And the evil they did lives on in Rome. That's all he's doing here. The evil that Nero did lives on through who? Through Domitian and what he's doing. That's exactly what's going on. So, after all this, you may feel like this. You may feel like this. That's okay. We've been through a lot. But let me just take you through another text and show you how wonderfully this works out. I mean, this is like when you get all the dots connected and you just go, oh, I see this. So, emperors of Rome. So here's our passage out of chapter 17. We're told how many have fallen? 5 have fallen. So 5 have fallen, 1 is. Now, 2 emperors before Domitian was Vespasian. Vespasian was Domitian's father. He was the first of what we call the Flavian emperors. So he's the first Flavian emperor. He rules from 69 to 79. So John says, as I'm writing this, 5 have fallen. 1 is. When do you think John is writing Revelation? During the time of Vespasian. You see that? 1 is. He couldn't say 1 is if he wasn't. He didn't say 1 was. He is. So, Rufus, this is to your question 4 or 5 classes ago about the historical background, and yes, this is why we had to wait. But it's really clear. He is. So he writes Revelation sometime. Most people think it's toward the back, 78, 79, something like that. He says the other has not yet come. Vespasian has two sons, Titus and Domitian. Titus takes the throne before Domitian. Titus is the older brother. He's the one who destroys Jerusalem in 70 AD with the Roman army. So he must remain for how long? Just a little while, and that's all he reigned. He only reigned 2 years. He got a fever and died. Then we're told this, the beast. This is the king who's so bad, he's not even a head. He's called the beast in 17 because he represents all the beastly elements of Rome in the way he's going to come after God's people. The beast who once was. Now we know the beast is Domitian. How is he's the beast who once was? What does that mean? Who's that a reference to? Who? Exactly. It's a reference to Nero, the beast that first of all occurred in Nero, who once was. And as John is writing this, what? Now is not. You know, they've had Antipas has been put to death, but apparently not a lot of other people at the time he writes this. And there may be a difference between the time John receives this and the time he's actually able to get it to the people in the 7 churches. We don't need to get into all that. But anyway, so at the time, the beast is not. During Vespasian's time, they're not going after the church. The beast who once was now is an 8th king. He belongs to the 7 and is going to his destruction. So here's his end. He's going to have the end everybody else has. He's going to destruction. We've already known that from several pictures, but now it's told to us very explicitly. So here's the beast who once was, is not, and later on John will say something like now is. So I want you to see, this is kind of like a pseudo-resurrection, right? This is not Nero who was resurrected, although there were some people who thought Domitian was Nero, you know, in kind of a superstitious way, like people who don't want to get on an elevator that has the 13th floor, you know, a button for that. But he wasn't. That's silly. He was just somebody who was acting like Nero. So this is a pseudo-resurrection. This is not the real thing. The real thing belongs to Jesus. You know, he's the real thing. But this is what false religion, and we'll see this in the back part of chapter 13, does. It imitates the true thing. So Rome tried to imitate God. So he brought back the persecution disciples had initially experienced under Nero, 54 through 68. All right. You're just totally confused by that? Is there some semblance of reason there, you think? You got to think about it some. That's okay. You got your material with us. We'll go over this a few more times. But like I say, it's really pretty simple on the math part. You just got to work your way through 7 to 13 to 17. And it all comes together really nice. All right, so let's do the back part of 13 real quick. It's not difficult. So what do we see in the last part of chapter 13? We see another beast. Where does this beast come from? This comes from the earth. And we are told, saw a second beast, verse 11, coming out of the earth, had 2 horns like a lamb. So what does that suggest to you? You going to be scared of a lamb? Now you're going to be scared of that beast with the 7 horns and all that stuff. You're not going to be scared of the lamb until what? Until he starts speaking. That'll unnerve you right there. And when he speaks, what kind of voice does he have? The voice of the dragon. So we've got some appearance and reality stuff going on. So this is Rome, and what we'll talk about more next week, the imperial cult. The imperial cult was nothing more than the worship of Rome, and precisely, specifically, the worship of Rome's emperors. Each one of these emperors, when they died, you know what they became? They became gods. The Senate would declare them to be a god. That's why you see blasphemous names. You remember the blasphemous names that are, part of the beast, written on the beast, because they all claim to be deity. Which is really interesting. They die, and somebody else has to declare them deity because they're dead, can't do it for themselves. But there you go. That shows you how impotent Rome is ultimately. Okay, so real quickly, this represents the religious aspect of Rome. The beast before we saw that came out of the sea, that's more the political / military beast. That's the one that's out triumphing over everybody and, grinding other people down and things like that. So this is more the religious aspect of Rome. This is what was known as the imperial cult. So we'll develop this more next week, but in short, you had all of these dead emperors who became gods, and they would build temples to them. And you went to the temple and you offered up a sacrifice to Augustus or to Nero or to whoever it was. And you'll love this because they were just as convenient in the first century as we are today. If you couldn't go to church there, you know what they would do? They would bring a bust of the dead emperor around. For a certain amount of money, you could buy a pinch of incense and you could offer it up and say, Augustus is Lord. He's God, he's deity. And the Romans would be very happy with you. You would be on their good list. You think Christians can do that? Yeah, that's not going to work with them. So you can already see some tension that's going to come from this kind of thing. So we'll develop this in more detail next week and talk about why this was so important to the churches of Asia. Last thing we're told, last thing we'll do tonight, it wouldn't be fitting if we didn't have another number, right? So we got another number, and this is the number out of Revelation, right? I kind of feel like I need to have a flashlight on my face right now, The number is 666. What does this mean? Oh my gosh. 666 is short of 777, right? 777 would just be perfection. 666 is imitation, but not the real thing. And isn't that what Rome's doing? They're pretending to be God. All these dead emperors are pretending to be God. The real God has died in the person of Jesus Christ. He's been resurrected. He's alive, and he holds the key to death and Hades. That's the real deal. These guys, they're just fake. And all this stuff is just fake. And the whole imperial cult, I'm not trying to insult anybody, but it's no more significant than the imperial stuff in Star Wars, right? It's all just fantasy. Yeah. So that's what the number means. Some people have said this spells out Nero, Caesar in the Hebrew. But that's true, but it also can be capable of spelling out many other words. It's a little system that the Hebrews, or it was popular in culture. I don't know that it was the Hebrews. Has anybody ever heard that it spells out Caesar, Nero? We won't mess with it then. Yeah. Yeah, you're good where you are. We may get into that later, but we won't mess with it. All right, so we made it through. A lot of stuff. Try to review this if you can, just a time or two. I think it will come. The more you look at it, the more it will flow. It does not flow the first time you see it. When I first came across this, I had to read it many times. I was like the gal that had the headache. That was me. So just think about this and you'll see, you can start thinking like John does and you can kind of see how it works. Let's finish with prayer. Father, some really material tonight. I think we know enough to know that it was still the world versus Rome trying to act like they were and trying they were gods, just like Pharaoh did back in the days of Moses. And they're impotent. You are the real God, and Jesus is the real Son of God. And Father, we don't get exactly in that way the sisters in the first century did. But we get tempted in lots of ways to walk out of your reign and your rule and to follow some other code, the world's code. So, Father, just remind us that in very real ways, Jesus is Lord in our life every day, in the things we say, the things we do, and the decisions we make. And we thank you for that, and we thank you for the true hope that we have because of that. And we pray this in your Son's name. Amen. All right, if anybody needs a copy of those questions, I can make you a copy, so just let me know about that.